from it. Okay. As you know, during the Omer, during this period between Passover and Shavuot, we are framing our practice, all the practice, yoga, text study, and meditation, um, framing it according to the theme, the sphira, the midah associated with each week. And we're coming to the end of, for our purposes, the end of the week of Chesed. And each day of the week, of course, constitutes a permutation with another midah. We have a major midah and a minor midah, as it were. And as always, I'm really delighted to welcome my dear friend and beloved colleague, Rabbi Sam Feinsmith, to lead us in practice. It's just been, it's worked out really wonderfully, Sam, for you to be leading us the last, I don't know how long, on Fridays, our pre-Shabbat, in this case, pre-Yontif practice, and grateful to welcome you back to lead us today.
Thanks, Mark. Hi, everybody. It's always great to see you and feel connected to you across the distances. And it's a blessing to be together and practice together today. I just want to say a couple of quick framing words about this practice of counting the Omer. And then we'll jump right into today's intention for practice through a little bit of text study. There's a beautiful metaphor used by Rabbi Shalom Noach Berezovsky, who was a 20th century Hasidic teacher who passed away in 2000, in his book Netivot Shalom, Pathways to Peace. And there he quotes his grandfather, I believe, who says that on Passover Eve, when the Jewish people, according to our tradition, were mired in the depths of enslavement and had reached the 49th level of impurity, of servility, right? And really, on their own merits, had not much to recommend redemption on their behalf. According to our tradition, and especially the Kabbalistic tradition, in God's unbelievable love and compassion, in God's chesed, which of course is our quality for this week, God, as it were, jumped over all of the necessary kind of natural ways of doing things, and as it were, skipped all of those prerequisites. Put the checklist off to the side and just jumped in and redeemed the people as an act of tremendous unconditional love. And says Rabbi Shalom Noach Berezovsky, you know what that's like? It's as if you're transported to the top of the mountain in one fell swoop, by way of helicopter, and you're just airdropped there, and you can just see the whole vista, But the very next day, we start counting the Omer, and says Rabbi Shalom Noach Berezovsky, again in the name of his grandfather, what's that like? It's like being taken back down to the bottom of the mountain and then being told, okay, you know what it looks like at the top. Now you need to climb the way yourself. Right? And so then we spend 49 days figuring out how to get our way back to that big love, to that unconditional and limitless field of love that expresses itself on Shavuot through wisdom, through the giving of good counsel for living a sacred and holy life. So that's what we're doing right now. We're making our way back up the mountain and really being driven and animated by this vision of love, this vision of compassion, right? Not just any love, but a kind of transcendent love coursing through all of reality that loves us unconditionally and without end. And that's chesed. That's chesed. That's the kind of loving kindness we're hoping to access and channel this week through our own being and through our practice. And each particular day of each particular week, as you may have already learned, it has its own kind of animating force, which is a sub-quality, or as Mark called it, a minor quality. Right? We're playing both major and minor keys here, and hopefully not in dissonance. So today's quality is hod, hod. And it's that quality which is meant to enact or help us animate our chesed, right? And the chesed that's all around us. The way to think about the primary quality of the week is that that's our intention, right? That's what we hope to access. That's what we hope to channel. That's how we hope to be, right? And in meeting that intention, we have, these other sub-qualities that can help us actualize and manifest that intention. And today that sub-quality is hod, right? So hod is the technology, as it were, for cultivating loving kindness and connecting to this big love that I mentioned. So Adi, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the screen share for a moment, that would be great. Because I want to offer a brief reflection on hod shebechesed, right? Loving kindness that animates or empowers or actualizes loving connection. And actually, by doing so, I want to turn to the Psalms, to a psalm that is called Hallel Hagadol, right? The great or extravagant, or magnanimous praise. And it opens with the line, Hodu l'Adonai ki tov, ki le'olam chasto. And we find both of those words in this verse, hodu, right? Which literally means offer thanks, but in the Hebrew language also means to acknowledge. The word lehodot, the verb lehodot, means both to offer thanks, to express gratitude, but also to acknowledge that there's a giver, someone expressing love. Right? And so we say offer thanks or acknowledge presence, ki tov, for it is goodness itself. Ki le'olam chasto, for divine love, chesed, right, fills the whole world. And so right there we have a meditation on hod and chesed together, kind of sandwiched together within this verse. Right? And the instructions that are provided here are essentially offer thanks or acknowledge the very goodness of being itself. That very goodness. And in so doing, you might then come into a deeper awareness that divine love animates and fills and permeates the whole world, every cell of our being, everything around us, everyone who we know, etc. Right? And I want to tell a little story. Adi, you can stop the screen share now. When I was a kid, I went to Orthodox day schools, and our teachers always said, you need to say blessings. You need to say blessings before you eat and after you eat. You need to say a blessing when you see a rainbow, or you need to say a blessing when you go to the bathroom, and many, many other types of blessings. And they were formulaic. And the reason they always gave is that the blessing helps us to say thank you. Right? And that's a really beautiful thing, that we have these kind of native gratitude practices in our tradition, where you stop everything that you're doing and for a moment you just say, thank you. However, that's not the whole picture, and that's not the whole story. And it was only later in life that I came to understand what the bigger picture is, right? Which is that saying thank you, which is an act of expressing hod, this quality that we're exploring today, that in and of itself, right, puts you directly in relationship with this transcendent field of love. Right? And it's a way of acknowledging, right, I am the recipient of that love in each and every moment of my life. And so with my own daughter, I'm working with her on reciting traditional blessings, right? But the animating kind of rationale is not just that we're saying thank you, but that the very act of saying thank you and acknowledging that we're dependent upon this vast web of being that animates our lives, right? That very experience itself, right, is a turning toward this transcendent field of love. acknowledging it and welcoming it more fully into our lives. So that's what we're going to do in meditation practice today. We're going to use this practice of Hod, which is about both gratitude and acknowledging what is moment by moment, with a stance of Toda, right, of thank you and appreciation, welcoming, acknowledging, celebrating, right? And noticing the ways in which that might then put us in relationship with the great web of being as a purveyor of unconditional, absolute, and limitless love. So let's take a moment to settle in. I invite you to take a posture that's both relaxed, solid, grounded, and at the same time dignified, alert, poised. And you might take a couple of deep breaths to simply relax your whole nervous system and let go of any tension or agitation. And we'll be guided today by the words of the Modeh or Modah or Mordim prayer. Modeh lefanecha. I am grateful before you. Melech Chai v'Kayam. Living and eternal spirit. Shechazarta binishmati, for returning my breath and consciousness to me today. B'chemla, with compassion. Rabba emunatecha. Abundant is your trustworthiness, your reliability. So I invite you to bring your attention to the rising and falling of your breath, if that feels like a safe space for you, wherever you feel it prominently in your body. That could be the belly, or the rib cage, or the nostrils. Choose one spot and commit to staying with it. And if the breath doesn't feel all that safe for you, you can focus on sounds or the feeling of contact between your chair or your support and your body. And in each moment, we can incline ourselves with a stance of Hod toward our experience in a way that is both grateful and acknowledges the truth of this moment. As each breath arrives, we might remember it could be otherwise. How wonderful. A gift. That's how it really is. Each breath is a gift. Each sound is a gift. Each sensation is a gift. Just notice what happens to your heart automatically and spontaneously when you incline yourself toward your moment by moment experience in this way. Recognizing that in each moment you're being animated by a force that is much greater than yourself. A vast, inexhaustible field of love. That never lets us down, that never stops giving, that never says I'm too tired or this person's more deserving, or I don't have enough. Of course, your mind will wander off. That's a little moment of falling asleep. And just as when we wake up in the morning, it's been Jewish tradition to recite Modeh or Modani, to awaken in gratitude. The moment you wake up is a little Modeh or Modani moment. Say, wow, I'm awake. This is also a gift. I'm conscious. Somehow mysteriously, consciousness returns. Allowing myself to experience myself as the recipient of blessing. And as you work on inclining yourself toward Hod in this way, you might also become aware of the fact that in the same way that you're being animated by love, so is everyone else on this call. So is everyone else on this planet. So is every being being sustained through loving connection. And it is through that field of love that we are all connected to one another. continue meditating as I share this poem, one of my favorites from Mary Oliver, the place I want to get back to. The place I want to get back to is where, in the pine woods, in the moments between the darkness and first light, 2 deer came walking down the hill. And when they saw me, they said to each other, "Okay, this one is okay. Let's see who she is and why she is sitting on the ground like that, so quiet, as if asleep or in a dream, but anyway, harmless." And so they came on their slender legs and gazed upon me, not unlike the way I go out to the dunes and look and look and look into the faces of the flowers. And then one of them leaned forward and nuzzled my hand. And what can my life bring to me that could exceed that brief moment? For 20 years, I have gone every day to the same woods, not waiting exactly, just lingering. Such gifts bestowed can't be repeated. If you want to talk about this, come to visit. I live in the house near the corner, which I have named Gratitude.
Thank you, my dear friend. Beautiful. So we bring that spirit of both the spirit of chesed and of gratitude to our practice of including Mourner's Kaddish to seal our practice together, to support those of us who are in mourning, and today to honor the memory of your father, Karen, Mayor Michael Ellis. And we invite those of you who are calling to mind or holding in your heart today, beloved ones whom you've lost, to share names in the chat box if you'd like, now or after Kaddish. And thanks, Adi, for sharing the words on the screen. Invite those of you who would like to join me by rising in body or in spirit for Kaddish. Gadol, Kadash, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
Be'alma, Dibra, Kirute, Be'alich, Malchute, Chayei, Shalom, Be'acham, Hayed, Kol, Be'Yisrael, Ba'atala, Yisrael, Kavi, Yehi, Shmei, Rabbah, Bararach, Olam, Ulamei, Barach, V'yishtabach, V'yitahar, V'yitmam, V'yaseh, Yithdar, Yithalel, Olam, U'mei, Ela, Kol Birchata, B'shirat, Hamad,
Amen.
Anma, Ahava, Shlama Lanu B'Shemaya, Shalom Aleinu V'Yavchu Yisrael V'Yimru Amin, Shalom Shalom, Shalom Aleinu V'Yavchu Yisrael V'Yakol Yoshvei Teva V'Yimru Amin.
Amen.
Amen.
Friends, thank you so much for joining us to sit together into Shabbat and the 7th day of Pesach. Just want to wish those of you who are leaving now, Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach, may it be restorative, meaningful, deep, liberating Shabbat / Chag for the last days of Pesach. And we hope you can join us next week for a full week of practice beginning on Monday, either yoga with Kenner Shamash at 11 and or meditation at 12:30 Eastern. You're invited, as always, to stay on for a few minutes of conversation with our teacher, Rabbi Sam Feinsmith, about today's teaching and practice, or to reflect on your experience today. Thank Karen Fried for sponsoring our practice in loving memory of the yahrzeit of her beloved father, Michael Ellis, Meir, Zichrono Livracha. His memory be a blessing. And as always, we thank you, Adi Stein, for holding our tech container with grace, ease, skill. And for those who are leaving again, Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach. Hope to see you next week. So if you do have a question you'd like to put to Sam, please put it in the chat box. And if possible, preface it with question in all caps. Keep an eye on that. The title of the Mary Oliver poem. So it's on the text, which maybe Adi can put the link to the text back in the chat box, so everyone can have access to that beautiful poem. It's also a personal favorite. Sam, what came to mind? I was thinking about weddings and intimacy, and what I've always, not always. I think as I got older and hopefully a little wiser, as I met with pre-wedding meetings with couples, the way I would frame what would happen under the chuppah would be as a moment of total mutual acceptance of the other person exactly as they are, as a gratitude practice, and that's something that could be repeated ritually every Friday night. When the candles were lit, to have a moment of just, if one is blessed with a partner, or it could apply equally to one's relationship with oneself, of just having a moment of appreciation, radical acceptance of oneself exactly as one is, and that love accompanies that. So the question I have, maybe this can be clarifying for people in terms of, the predominant theme of the week, and the midah or sphera that modifies or informs it. Because it's confusing for me in my mind. Is this moving from gratitude as a gateway to chesed, to love, or is it love as a gateway to chesed, or both?
Sorry, Mark, the second option, did you mean to say love as a gateway to gratitude?
Yes, that's what I meant. Yes.
No problem.
Which
So,
in other words, because we're going to have another day, which will be the week of Hod, which will have chesed of Hod.
Exactly.
So what's the difference between this day and that day?
Thanks.
Another way to think of it.
I've thought a lot about this question as well, and what's been most helpful for me is, what I shared before, that each week we have a dominant quality that we're trying to refract or channel or magnify, right, through our mindfulness practice. And so our intention this week, right, is to do just that around chesed, around loving kindness, loving connection, right, which is often understood as well in our tradition to have a valence of compassion, right. This real sense that we're connected to each other through this massive transcendent field of love, right, of which we're a part, right, like a cell within the divine organism, or a wave within the divine ocean, which is itself pure love. And then, there's multiple ways to enact that love, multiple inroads and multiple ways to enact it, right? So that ultimately it's balanced and fully empowered. And so the subqualities that change by day as we proceed through the week, right, are those qualities that both provide a gateway in, a technology for cultivating that love, and the energy for empowering that love, so that it doesn't remain abstract or lean, but becomes robust, right, and fully manifest. So today that quality is Hod, but we will have, as you said, Mark, right, in the fifth week of counting the Omer, we will make our primary quality Hod, which is to say we'll spend a whole week really trying to refract, channel, magnify, right, gratitude and especially the kind of gratitude that comes from really being able to do what you just described, right? Really acknowledge what is with total and unconditional acceptance as it is. Um, and by the way, that includes gratitude for things like grief, right? And I've had moments in my life when I was grieving the loss of my father, and through practice, I came into a deep quality of acceptance and felt profound gratitude for the process of grieving and the feelings of grief that I was experiencing. And we'll come into that gratitude through the doorways, right, of these qualities, these sub-qualities, which will then help balance and empower our gratitude. Okay, I hope that's
Beautiful.
helpful.
That is. That's great. I think that's really helpful. And it also points out that although, this over the course of this week, I've encouraged people not to get too wrapped up in the complexities of the permutations of these spherot, because that may feel overwhelming or intimidating. It's fine just to say, okay, I'm just doing chesed this week. That's fine. Stick with one. It is helpful to remember the inextricable relationship with among all of them, that they're all present in each other, which is hard to wrap our heads around. And so we do it one day at a time by saying, okay, so remember also Hod is present in Chesed and Chesed in Hod. So there's a question from Carlo. It's a really good question. What do you mean by animating our lives? Does that mean loving energy from human to human energizes and enlivens each of us, and in turn God? Or does it mean God enlivens humans with loving energy, and in turn we enliven each other? Or does it mean something else? Or I might add, or both?
Yeah, I would say both. You know, we put this out there to you and allow you, obviously, and invite you to check it out for yourself and make your own decisions about what's true for you. But at IJS, we're working with a neo-Hasidic theological framing where God is not a being, right? But the field of being itself. And that's really what the name Yud He Vav He, right? The Tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God. That's what that means, right? It's some contraction of the verbs was, is, and will be into one unnameable tense, right? That is actually a tense that transcends and includes all tenses. And so we might translate God's name as being itself, or being unfolding, or ever being, or something like that,
Right,
right? Would be
right.
more accurate than a being out there in the sky in some transcendent realm, right? And of course, we are part of the web of being itself, are we not? And the way that the Hasidic tradition understands our relationship with the whole field is that we are like waves in that ocean of being, or like cells within the corporate body of that being, right? And B, that field of being itself is made of pure love and consciousness, right, at its most elemental level. Which is to say, if you could kind of disrobe it from its corporeal manifestations, right, and get down to the most kind of basic building blocks of divinity, you would discover, and right, this is something that we can check out through our practice. It's not meant to be an abstract claim. You would discover, or you might discover, that it's all just conscious energy, right, flowing in the direction of love and connection. Its natural kind of flow is in the direction of love and connection. And that happens both beyond us, right? Because obviously there are processes at play in this field of being that are much bigger than any one of us, like the evolution of planets and the sun, right? And the amazing love that the sun bestows upon us every day just by shining, right? And creating, the possibility for this planet to have life on it and to have nourishment for us, and so on and so forth. Right? But then there's also the ways in which that energy of love and consciousness flows through us and between us, right? And there's no separation whatsoever, because again, we're waves within that ocean, right? It's like that famous story that I think Ram Dass told, and that Rabbi Jeff Roth quotes in his book Jewish Meditation Practices for Everyday Life. These two waves, they're coming into shore. Some of you may have heard me share this parable before. There's these two waves coming into shore, and they're kind of looking over the waves that are in front of them and seeing that eventually all the waves crash against the shore and they die, right? So one of the waves becomes totally anxious and overwrought with fear, and tightens up and tenses, and his mind becomes full of all kinds of thoughts and anxiety, trying to figure, how am I going to avoid this demise, right? He even tries to push backward against the current, right, to no avail. Meanwhile, there's a wave right next to him, and he says to her, like, what's the story? You're totally calm. Right? So she eventually says to him, it's just because I know something you don't. That's all. Right? You're not a wave, you're water. So, what if, let me put this out there as a hypothesis and you can check it out in your own experience. What if deep down, right, beyond all of the physical appearances and all of the stories our mind tells us and all of the conceptual overlays we project onto reality itself, right, and our relationships and all that stuff, what if deep down, beneath all of that, and ultimately undergirding all of that, as well as permeating all of that, right, all we were was pure loving consciousness, never separate from the whole field, which is itself is pure love and consciousness. Consider that for a moment.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good.
Check it out. Check it out in your own experience.
Check it out in your own experience. That's a great coda for the week of Chesed, Sam. There are some questions coming up which are interesting. Like there's what you say, and then there's like the objections. Objection, Your Honor. But what about people who make me angry? But what about what about chronic illness? What about pain? What about suffering? We can't answer those questions in 2 minutes. Just to suggest, though, that those are legitimate questions, and that this is one sphera we're talking about here. It's the one we begin with, right? This is the foundational sphera or midah, the practice that we start with. What you're describing, but we are going to segue beginning in week 2 of the Omer to Gevura, which is what defines and delineates the wave and the cell, so that we are both, we become aware that, in this week, as you're describing, we're striving to access that part of ourselves that's the wave that says, I know something you don't know. It's just water. It's only water. Next week the waves gets to say, yeah, but I'm a wave too, and I'm coming to an end here, right? And there's
right, and my knee hurts, and I've got cancer, and there's a pandemic, and
that's
I've
all true.
acted justly my whole life, and I'm still getting slammed here,
right?
all
And
that
we
stuff.
got to deal with that too, and that's also part of the picture. So we will transition to that. But it's nice, especially as we enter into Shabbat, which is a day really of cultivating what you're describing, Sam, right? Of and ironically or not, as we stand at the shore today, and tomorrow to cross the sea. Like, what does it mean to behold that sea, that ocean, and to remember that, we are mostly made up of water, right? And we're waves. Closing words,
both
Rabbi?
literally and figuratively, right?
Yeah, it's really something.
Or both literally and spiritually. Well, I just want to wish all of you a Shabbat Shalom. And I pray that through the ongoing days of this week of Chesed, you'll continue to cultivate an awareness of that big love flowing through your life. May it sustain and nourish you and those around you and spread out like water in all directions.
Well, you make it easier, my friend. So thank you so much. Thanks, Adi. Thanks, Karen, for sponsoring the practice today. And most of all, thanks to all of you for your devotion to this practice and for showing up for yourself, for each other, and building a beautiful community of practice of chesed. So, Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach. Hope to see you on Monday. Be well, everyone. Blessings to all.
Shabbat Shalom. Thanks. Take care.